Okay, in this video we're going to be looking at changing the focal length of the camera to get an image similar to this. So let's open up the Revit and open up this view. So making sure that the fruit bowls are at close proximity to the camera and you have a focal point in the distance of either a chair or a person, etc. So first of all, let's just look at our settings. So first we have to change which view we're going to render, so it should be internal close-up, and the sun ray, rather than using the V-ray, we're going to use dome lighting because we've got a large expansive bit of glass, and rather than having a sky we want to put a backdrop to it, so we're going to use dome lighting, and we're using the same image, and we'll leave the exposure to 12. All the materials are already preset, so let's click the render button. So you should end up with an image similar to this. As you can see, it's quite dark, and it took quite a considerable time to render because of the images and the elements within the modelled within that view. Now there's a little trick that you can use, and that's applying a section box behind you. It does two things. One, it cuts out when it's rendering, it cuts out what it's trying to render behind and reduces the rendering time, and it also allows light to come into that space. So to add in a section box within that view, if we click on the ground floor plan, and then we just a single click on the 3D view, and then we right click and we select section box first of all. So make sure internal close-up view is selected and section block is clicked, and then you can go back to right click and select show camera. Sorry, so show section box. Now that's the section box in plan. What you can do is just cut it. You're standing around here, so you can just move it slightly forward. Now if we go back to that view, if we double click on it and click the render button, it should be a lot lighter and should take half the amount of time. Okay, as you can see, the image is a lot lighter and it didn't take as quick. Sorry, it took a little bit quicker to recreate. Now we're going to look at creating that changing the focal length, so making it sharp at the in front and then blurred at behind. Now to do that, if we click on the camera, and there's a little tab that says effects, and if you expand on it, it gives you two options, and the defocus and the focal distance. So the focus distance is the point where the camera will focus at a point. So if we're going to focus in on the fruit bowl, we need to find out what distance it is. So if we go back to the ground floor plan, and if we right click on that view to close that, we right click on internal view and it says show camera. So our camera is stood around there. Now if we use this little tape measure tool, which is up there or up here, and we just roughly select where the fruit bowl is, and it should tell you up there it's 476 from the camera point up to the fruit bowl. So if we go back to the view and again reopen the camera settings and we type in 47, doesn't have to be exact, just an approximate, and if we change the defocus to 0.3 so we can see how much, so we can see the defocus in the background. Now if we click render again, it should change the focal length of the camera. So as you can see, when it's finished rendering, the fruit bowl is a lot more sharper, but the backdrop is defocused to give you that effect. Now you can do the opposite and make for example, the chair a lot clearer and the fruit bowl blurred. So if we go back to our ground floor plan, and again, just have to do it roughly. So we use a tape measure from the point of where you're standing up to that chair. So if I said it's roughly about 7 meters. So if we go back to close-up view and we go to exposure value and change the focal distance to 7,000 and click render, it will change the focal length and focus in on the chair rather than the fruit bowl. As you can see, the reverse has happened. The chair becomes a lot more clearer and the fruit bowl becomes blurred. And once you're happy, you can export the channels. What I'm also going to talk about is channels. Now channels are layers within Revit and V-Ray, which enables you to separate the drawing into layers. Now one of the important channels which will be quite useful when taken into Photoshop, is the materials ID. Now to export the materials ID channel, if we click on V-Ray, click on settings, and if we go to channels, and if you scroll all the way down, if you tick materials ID and close and re-render it, you'll be able to export the channels as well as the final image. So after a few minutes rendering, you're at the top. If you want to look at the materials ID channel, click materials ID and it will change that image, and if we say save current channel, you're able to export it as a JPEG. And this is most useful when if you want to change materials or do magic wanding in Photoshop. The final image is RGB color. There's also alpha, so the black and white, bloom, etc., etc. But a good one will be materials ID. So that concludes internal views today.